Something very unusual happened at the Indian Wells Open this year. At first, the tournament looked like a massive success. The stadiums were packed to capacity. Fans were cheering loudly from every corner of the venue. Tickets were selling faster than expected. For tournament director Tommy Hose, everything seemed perfect. The atmosphere was electric. The numbers were strong, and the event was shaping up to be one of the best in recent memory. But then something strange happened. Almost overnight, the crowds disappeared. Entire sections of the stadium started looking empty. Even during important matches, the atmosphere felt unusually quiet. For a tournament as prestigious as Indian Wells, that kind of sudden drop in attendance was shocking. And when organizers began looking for the reason behind it, they discovered something no one expected. The fans had not lost interest in tennis. They had simply lost the one player they came to see. That player was Alex Eala. Before her elimination, Alex Eala had completely transformed the atmosphere at Indian Wells. Fans were not just watching tennis. They were witnessing the rise of a new star. Her opening match against Diana Yastremska became one of the most talked about moments of the entire tournament. The demand to watch that single match shocked everyone involved. Ticket prices skyrocketed beyond normal levels. Crowds flooded the venue in numbers organizers had not anticipated. More than 58,000 fans showed up that day. The crowd was loud, excited, and completely engaged. It felt less like a normal tennis match and more like a global sporting event. And according to reports, the tournament generated millions of dollars in ticket sales from that single day alone. But the numbers only tell part of the story because what really stood out was the energy. Every seat was filled. Every point drew a reaction. The venue was alive in a way that even seasoned tournament organizers rarely see. For the organizers, this was a dream scenario. A young rising player was attracting massive international attention. The packed stadium was creating spectacular visuals for broadcasters around the world. Global excitement was building around the tournament brand. Everything had aligned perfectly. But then the story took an unexpected turn. Eala was eliminated from the tournament, and suddenly everything changed. The stadiums that had once been full started looking strangely quiet. Matches that should have drawn big audiences suddenly had very few spectators. The contrast was striking and immediate. Observers noticed shockingly small crowds during Stadium 2 matches. In fact, some people joked that calling it hundreds of fans might actually be an exaggeration. Fans watching on television began noticing the empty sections. Commentators started mentioning the attendance drop on air. Social media quickly filled with videos showing entire sections sitting half empty. For a tournament that usually attracts some of the biggest crowds in tennis, this was highly unusual. For tournament director Tommy Hose, the message was becoming painfully clear. A huge number of fans had been there specifically for Alex. Once she was gone, many of them simply stopped attending. Ticket sales began to drop noticeably. The energy inside the stadium faded dramatically, and suddenly Hose found himself facing a serious problem. For a tournament of this size, empty seats are not just disappointing, they are expensive. Every empty seat represents lost revenue. When thousands of seats remain empty across multiple days, the financial impact becomes very real. Tennis tournaments rely heavily on attendance for survival, and the incredible momentum built earlier in the week was evaporating rapidly. That is when Hose reportedly began looking for a solution, and the idea he came up with surprised many people. According to several reports, he started exploring the possibility of organizing an exhibition match featuring Alex Eala. The concept was straightforward: bring her back onto the court even though she had already been eliminated. Not part of the official tournament draw. Not connected to the main competition bracket. The goal was simple: bring Alex back and bring the fans back. Exhibition matches during active tournaments are highly unusual. The fact that this idea was even being considered signaled just how desperate the situation had become. But for Hose, it was not just about entertainment. It was about survival. The tournament needed to recover lost attendance, and the evidence was undeniable. Whenever Eala played, fans showed up. Crowds became louder and the atmosphere inside the stadium completely changed. When she was gone, they stopped attending. The idea itself confirmed what many had already suspected. The Eala effect was real. Alex Eala was creating something that many tournaments struggle to achieve, a genuine connection with fans. Her matches were not just tennis matches. They were events. Fans wanted to see her. They wanted to experience the atmosphere when she stepped onto the court. That kind of connection cannot be manufactured. It happens naturally when a player captures the imagination of the public. And for millions of fans, especially in the Philippines and across Asia, Eala had become exactly that kind of player. But this situation also sparked a much bigger conversation across the tennis world. Many fans began questioning whether the Women's Tennis Association had underestimated Alex's popularity. A pattern was emerging across multiple tournaments. Organizers consistently seemed unprepared for the crowds she attracted. Some people pointed to what happened earlier at the Australian Open as evidence. During that tournament, Eala had reportedly been scheduled to play on smaller courts instead of the main stadiums. At first, that decision did not seem controversial. But then something surprising happened. Huge numbers of fans started lining up to watch her matches. Many waited in long lines hoping to enter the smaller courts, but because seating was limited, thousands were left outside, unable to watch. The situation became chaotic and embarrassing for organizers. Instead of reducing the hype around her, the situation had the opposite effect. The excitement only grew bigger. Fans became more curious. More people started talking about why she was being placed on smaller stages. Media coverage increased dramatically, and suddenly, Eala was becoming one of the most talked about young players in women's tennis. Tournament after tournament, organizers appeared unprepared. The question became whether this was a simple oversight or a recurring pattern. Fans demanded better scheduling and recognition of her drawing power. And the Indian Wells situation was the most dramatic example yet. But her rise is not only about popularity. It is also about genuine talent. And even the biggest names in tennis have started noticing. One of those names is Novak Djokovic. Djokovic has openly praised Alex Eala's game, specifically observing that watching her play on television is impressive, but watching her play live is even better. That kind of praise carries enormous weight. Djokovic has spent decades competing at the highest level. He has played against the greatest players in tennis history. He has won the biggest titles in the sport. He understands elite tennis better than almost anyone. And when he recognizes talent in a young player, the entire tennis world listens carefully. But Djokovic is not the only voice supporting Alex Eala. Former world number 1 Maria Sharapova has also spoken about the importance of her rise. Sharapova pointed out that for many years, women's tennis at the highest level has been dominated by players from Europe and North America. While the sport has expanded globally, representation from Asia at the top level has remained limited. But Alex Eala is beginning to change that narrative. These are not casual observers offering polite compliments. These are all-time greats identifying genuine world-class potential. Their endorsements signal to the tennis establishment that Eala deserves serious attention, and they validate what fans have already been saying for months. Perhaps the most significant part of Eala's rise is what it represents beyond the tennis court. Tennis has historically been dominated by European and North American players at the highest levels. Asian representation at the top of professional tennis has been limited for decades. Eala is actively changing this long-standing pattern. Her success is inspiring millions of fans across Asia. For the first time, many fans in the Philippines and across the continent see someone from their region competing on the biggest stages in professional tennis. Young players now believe that reaching the top of the sport is genuinely possible. The psychological barrier is being shattered. When a young athlete breaks through on the global stage, it often opens the door for many others to follow. Eala's success could trigger increased investment in tennis infrastructure across Asia. More young Asian players may pursue professional tennis careers. The sport's fan base could expand dramatically into new markets. And for tennis overall, this matters enormously. The sport needs global growth and new audiences. Eala represents exactly the kind of breakthrough that can transform a sport's international profile. Her connection with fans is not just about skill. It is about identity, pride, and representation. That kind of connection runs deeper than any marketing campaign. Back at Indian Wells, however, the pressure was still mounting. Empty seats meant lost momentum that could not be easily recovered. The exhibition match idea continued to gain traction as the most viable solution. The situation had become a case study in how one player can define an entire tournament. The pattern was clear. When Alex Eala played, people showed up in massive numbers. When she was gone, many of those people stopped attending. No other explanation fit the data. This was not speculation. It was observable, measurable, and financially significant. For Hose and the Indian Wells organizers, the realization came too late for this tournament. But the lesson was powerful and unmistakable. Future tournaments would need to plan differently when Alex Eala was in the draw. The question was no longer whether she was a draw. It was how to maximize that draw. Fans are constantly searching for new stars, new personalities, and new stories that capture their imagination. And when a player connects with audiences in a special way, the entire sport begins to feel different. The WTA and tournament organizers need to recognize and leverage these moments. Failing to do so means leaving enormous value on the table. With the Miami Open approaching, all eyes turn toward what Alex Eala would do next. Would she continue her rise through the rankings? Would the massive crowds follow her from tournament to tournament? Would tennis organizations finally recognize and properly accommodate the incredible interest she generates? Would the WTA adjust scheduling and court assignments to match her drawing power? These questions remain unanswered, but one thing is already certain. The events at Indian Wells revealed something powerful and undeniable. Eala is no longer just another young player trying to climb the rankings. She has become a phenomenon. A player capable of drawing massive crowds. A player capable of changing the atmosphere of an entire tournament. A player whose presence or absence directly determines ticket sales. The rise of Alex Eala is something that cannot be ignored. And if her journey continues the way it has begun, this story could become one of the most exciting chapters in modern tennis. Because sometimes the arrival of a new star does not just change a tournament, it changes the entire sport. And right now, the tennis world is starting to realize that Alex Eala might be exactly that kind of player.